going to talk about today is about this idea of having the sacredness in home and bringing ourselves and our children and our homeschools back to home, and just reframing our houses, our homes, as both our homes and as our schools. There's a beautiful quote, and it's talking about home being like the school of love. Like, that's got other connotations that I'm not going to go into, but that idea of where we do love our friends, love our family, love our pets. Both Amanda and Michelle have the most cutest dogs ever. Anyway, so it's having that love in our home, but having it to sustain us, because yes, that can be a beautiful ideal on one side, but the reality of making our homes work and our homeschools work is another thing. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I guess I wanted to start by saying it really is quite a radical job we do, one, as parents, but two, as homeschooling parents, to take and shape all of the ordinary moments of life that we live in our homes and our gardens, and shape them into the lives of the people that our children are becoming and will become, and that life of discipleship. It really is going against the grain. It's not what most people do. Most people will send them to school, then they'll come back to home at the end of the day. And when we were thinking about what would be the best offerings for the conference, and that's fed into doing these lunchtime talks, our family were in the most unfortunate situation of homeschooling in a hotel, and we had to do that for 6 months. We didn't do it by choice. So I'll tell you a little bit of the story. We'll talk about it in another time for another talk. And some of you have heard bits and bobs of this story, but the short story is that my family, we were over in Perth to see family over there, and we got a call from our neighbour to find out that we had lost all of the back part of our house from flooding. So we did have a house sitter, a beautiful girl we've known for years. She did what she can. Plumbing friends of ours did what they could, but we just had to change all of our flights, cancel our holiday, cancel our time with family, and we got on a plane as quickly as we could. And when I came in, like, if I tilted my computer up, all of our ceiling for all of the bottom half was just on the floor. I remember sending Amanda a video, and I had simply put my phone from one side up from the wall, and I just did it all the way up, and you could see the roof because there was no ceiling. There was insulation and ceiling and cornices and everything all on the floor. We lost everything that was here. And so for the next 6 months, we were not in our own home. We tried to rebuild it. It was a time of loss. It was a time of insurance nightmares, and I'm a lawyer. It was a time of dealing with builders who said they would come, but of course didn't, or any tradesperson who said they would come. It was just a time of waiting. And the more we waited, the more everything just stayed in this dank, damp, horrible situation. We lost skip load, like we took 2 massive skip loads full of stuff that we just could not save. We, like, the treasured artworks that I'd put in that special box. Then when I pulled out, it just fell apart. So we had all of that just sadness and tragedy of having lost our home, but you still have to keep going. So we were living in a hotel 60 kilometres away from our home, because that was the closest that our insurance company could get. We used to either have a 1 week or a fortnightly booking for that hotel. And so sometimes they might ring and go, oh, actually, you've got to move tomorrow. And we'd have to pack up the stuff that we did have and go to another hotel. And it wasn't home. I remember I'm in New South Wales, so I rang my AP, because I sit on one of the NESA homeschooling boards, so I needed to keep everything above board. So I remember I rang my AP and said, look, we are still homeschooling, but we're not at home because legally my house is not, I'm not allowed, it's not habitable. So I am homeschooling, but we're in Canberra and we're in a hotel. And I was like, I was trying to keep it all above board. She's like, oh my goodness. Like, she was horrified. So I remember I found whatever things I could, and we took them to the hotel, and we did do lessons, but it just wasn't the same. And that was really my heart when we were talking about sustaining ourselves, because I just want to tell you, you need to be home to homeschool. I can attest to that because I did it. and you need to be in a place of home. There is something sacred, and there is just something that just adds to your homeschool when you are planted in your own home. So just to reinforce this part of the sacredness of home, I have got a beautiful little bit. So settle in, I'm going to read to you just for a moment. I've got a little bit from The Hobbit, and this is what you can think about for a vision for your homes, because they're in Rivendell. Okay, and he says, it's talking about Bilbo, because he's just arrived, and he's talking about getting there. And he says, and it's talking about Elrond's house here at Rivendell, and he said his house was perfect. Whether you liked food or sleep or work or storytelling or singing or just sitting and thinking best, or a pleasant mixture of them all, evil things did not come into that valley. I wish I had time to tell you even a few of the tales or one or two of the songs that were heard in that house. All of them, the ponies as well, grew refreshed and strong in the few days there. Their clothes were mended as well as their bruises, their tempers and their hopes. Their bags were filled with food and provisions light to carry, but strong to bring them over the mountain passes. Their plans were improved with the best advice. And then the next bit, of course, comes to midsummer and they have to leave. But I just love that vision of, the last homely home. And I think really that's something that when you pick curriculum, or you're picking books, or you're getting the list, or you're getting the stationery supplies, or you're getting that IKEA cart that every single homeschooler seems to have, you just forget that that's actually what we want. We want all the best parts of our homes to be what feeds ourselves as moms, but also our children and our families. So I wanted to start with there. I'm going to pause for a minute because I'm wondering whether Michelle's got something she wants to add in there. No, good. I'm just going to, I'm not trying to be awkward, but I don't want to hog it either because I could talk for a while about this. So I guess when we know that this is where our schools happen, this is where our families happen, this is where we love our kids, this is where the skirmishes happen, let's keep it real. But this is where we eat and we drink and we gather people in. So when we honor that in our homeschools, we also need to know what matters most. And that's going to look different to some homeschools. Now, I'm just going to take some words out of Michelle's mouth that we've talked about before. And she was talking about tennis lessons. Now you'll see a laugh or smile at a moment, because she has shared the story with some of our homeschool mums before when she was trying to figure out whether or not they would do tennis lessons, but balancing it for her own homeschool. And sometimes you have to decide whether you're going to do karate or you're going to do the tennis lessons, or whether you're going to do something else. So you have to know what matters most in your home and keep that mind of your home being a place where hopefully the clothes will be mended. You can outsource that if you need to, but where you're going to be fed, where you're going to be nurtured, where you're going to be raising up your children. So it's a matter of prioritizing your resources, prioritizing your space. And by which we do not mean at my homeschool that you need to find a spare room in the house and set it up as a classroom. That's exactly what we're not talking about. But you do need to have a space where you homeschool. And you need to prioritize your time. You need to figure out which parts of your day are dedicated to your homeschool, and which parts, when you're at your home, you're not doing schooling. Okay. And it's also about your energy. And we know that some mums have got lots of energy, and some mums are going through harder times when they just don't have as much energy. Michelle and I have both been through really hard chapters in our lives when we've been unwell and tried to homeschool. So that's why we're going to talk about disruptions in the homeschool later on. But you have to be realistic at this stage what energy you can put in terms of your homeschooling, and realizing it is just for a season. So no matter what grade they're in at that time, they are going to get older, and there might be more children in the mix, and things are going to switch and change around. So when you're thinking about what matters and what's most important for your home, if you're thinking that you do need another comfy chair, or you don't need a row of desks, that's what you're trying to create. You're trying to think about what the essence is for your family at this stage in your home and in your homeschooling as well too. And when you start thinking about those priorities, you're starting to work out what you want to outsource and what you need to outsource, and when to do that as well. You know, I can joke about mending the clothes, but I do mend my own clothes, just saying. But you're also working out what's the biggest bang for your buck as well. We've all got, you know, our own limited resources. So in nurturing that home, it is sometimes very much a very realistic, you know, equation of, do I spend the money on buying the comfy chair because we all are getting squashed on the couch together, now they're getting bigger? Or, you know, do I allocate that money for my book budget? Or do I allocate that money for my tennis lessons or karate fees or whatever it is? So again, that will change over time. And for us, rebuilding our house, it was a massive financial equation in amongst that. We're trying to deal with the different costs from the different tradespersons, deal with what insurance might cover and might not, and working out what it was to rebuild our home. It's one thing for a tradesperson to come in and give us a new ceiling, and another one to come in and do the wiring, and another one to put in the insulation. But making those choices after having lost so many things that were so precious, I was so careful and so particular about what I would let back in. You know, I've shown Amanda and Michelle pictures of our beautiful kitchen, and for me, because I love to eat and I love to cook, like that was really the heart of the home, and that suffered a lot of damage, as did our library, as did our Cliff, my husband, our bedroom, and all of like, if you could see a blueprint of the house, all of this part of the house. But it was then prioritizing, okay, well, where do I want to spend the money in rebuilding my home? And that's the same for our homeschools as well too. Where is it most important for you? Like a lot of people, the most important thing will be to pay for the curriculum and going, okay, that does represent a big chunk of my budget, but I've got that in place and I can borrow the books from the library or grab some from a friend. But for other people, it's other things. So it's being mindful of that. And being okay if you want to get the comfy chair so you can all do read alouds together as well too. You know what you as a family want, and you know what your children's interests are. So, you know, be confident that, you know, what is right for you might not be what your best friend's doing or other people in your co-op are doing, but it's where your heart is, and that's what's most important. So I'm going to take a breath and take a drink, and that will give Michelle a chance if she wants to bump in, but that's okay if she doesn't.
All right. I did think of just two things while you have a little bit of a break, and these are kind of funny things, but two things I thought of with outsourcing and not getting too obsessed about your school and separating school from homeschooling. So this quick story is, when I was first homeschooling, I went to this park event for homeschoolers, and there was this lady there, and we both had 5-year-olds. And she said to me, what uniform does your child wear when you start homeschooling? I'm like, pajamas? And she was horrified. She was like, oh, no, my husband's bought this special outfit that we have to wear whenever we're doing homeschooling, and it helps us to focus and get into the routine and everything. And I was just, you know, laughing. I couldn't believe it. To me, it just seemed ridiculous. But I know that some people do have a bit of a, you know, an idea of how they do it. But homeschooling is just so different to school, and you don't feel like you have to always be making that separation. We're at school now, or we're at home now. And the other one that Joe was talking about, outsourcing, is that get a cleaner if you can. I mean, I have had times when I've definitely had a cleaner while I've been homeschooling, because to me, I don't care who cleans the toilet, and I don't care who mops my floor. When my kids were so little, if the floor was to be mopped by them, it wouldn't have been a great event. And so just think about the things that you can outsource, because we only have a finite amount of time. And if you can, that would be my top tip. Outsource what you can. Okay, I'll hand it back over to Jo.
No, I love that, because the one thing we all said after 6 months of having like in the hotels where it has the please make up my room, because the cleaning staff would come in every day and they're like, hi, madam. And they knew Ingrid's name. She's my youngest. Hi, Ingrid. Hi, madam. Like, I just wanted to clean it myself. So I'm not there yet, but give me a little bit longer and I might be, okay, I want to make up my room. I want to make up my room button. The other part, like this, that's perfect, Michelle, because it segues into it in terms of it's the community. It's gathering your community. Like often homeschoolers talk about co-ops, and they can be great. They can be really not great, but they can be great. But it's that gathering community, because one of the things we found when we were in the hotel was that we were homesick, meaning we just wanted to come home. Like that's, when you're not at home, that's where you want to be. And when you think about the fact that as mothers, if there's any dads here, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be, anyway, but as mothers, as homeschooling parents, we are trying to always just give that life to them, and we're there to guide them. We're there to help them with their algebra, but we're just there to guide them and disciple them and encourage them. I remember one time when one of my kids had something on and you had to write down what your occupation was, and because it was for the specific sports thing, I wrote cheerleader, because I was there to be his cheerleader. And the others laughed. I'm like, well, that's my role today. And they're like, well, because I didn't even say occupation, it said role. I'm like, so today my role is cheerleader. So you've got to think about those things and build in that support for you as mum, as well as building in the support for them. So many times co-ops can be great for the kids, but it can be like, I don't know, blood sports for the moms. Not all of them, but sometimes they can be. So just think through where you can get your best support, whether it's getting a cleaner or whatever it is. Just think about how you gather your community around your home and around your family as well too, because as mums we need to be nurtured as much as the kids need to be nurtured as well, because you do put on a lot. Can I read? Are we going okay for time? Can I read another bit? It's not from, don't worry, it's not from The Hobbit. It's from Wind in the Willows. And it's that beautiful bit when Mole has been off with Ratty for ages. And then he realizes that there's this thing that he can't put his finger on. He's been having the greatest adventures. And then this is what he says. It's like, it was one of these mysterious fairy calls from out of the void that suddenly reached Mole in the darkness, making him tingle through and through with its very familiar appeal. Even while as yet, he could not clearly remember what it was. He stopped dead in his tracks, his nose searching hither and thither in his efforts to recapture the fine filament, the telegraphic current that had so strongly moved him. A moment, and he had caught it again, and with it this time came recollection in the fullest flood. Home. That was what they meant, those caressing appeals, those soft touches wafted through the air, those invisible tiny hands pulling and tugging all one way. Why, it must be quite close to him at that moment, his old home that he had hurriedly forsaken and never sought out again, that day when he first found the river. And now it was sending out its scouts and messengers to capture him and bring him in. And I could read you more, but you could probably all got on your shelves. And it's just that beautiful idea, and that's from the chapter of Dolce Dolmen, like it's that sweet home. And he just had discovered home. So he came back, and of course he brings Ratty back, and that's that place where you can gather. So Michelle and I have both had chapters in our homeschooling when we've done co-ops, and there's been other times when we've done more covert co-ops when we've just invited families into our homes and just welcomed them here. And done classes around the table, or whatever it is. I say classes, but you know what I mean, in terms of just getting together and learning together. So also too, that keeping that idea that we're not clearly defining, well, this is my homeschool part, this is my home life. It's together, and it's that idea that home will call them, and it's going to call other people too. So gathering that community, gathering in that community. And of course, all of that can make us really quite exhausted. So make sure you build in some rest. Now, when they're younger, it's easy for mums to say, well, while the younger ones are having a nap, I'm going to get up and do everything. Yeah, no, the most important thing you do when your kids are napping is that at that stage of life, you nap too, because you're not getting enough rest. But it's just giving yourselves pause. Obviously, that looks different when you have teenagers, because their times are completely different. But it's that time for all of you to just restore and to nurture yourself and to repair, because homeschooling you're in it for the long haul, whether or not you're doing it for excuse me, just one semester or one term, or whether you're intending to do it always. No matter what time frame you put it on, it does demand a lot for you. So that idea of building in rest in the way that you organize your time and organize your spaces, just don't ignore that. Earlier, because of the way my region is set up, one of our local librarians who drives the bookmobile around has for years just given my name and number to anybody who might even just whiff homeschooling. But he had done this for months before I actually found out that he'd done it. I would have these random people ring me going, hi. And I guess they always thought he'd passed on their details to me, but of course, I don't know. Anyway, he just didn't. I was thinking, and so I don't know how it came up in conversation with him. He goes, oh, yes, I keep sending them to you. And anyway, by the time I'd found out, I had spoken to so many different homeschoolers, and and a number of times, and I think of one in particular, I had also just gone out to their places. When I look back upon it now, I think, what was I doing? These were people I didn't know, my friends didn't know, and anyway, that's for another talk, obviously. But I remember one of the ones I went to, and she only knew one other person, and there's only one person I'd only spoken to, and they'd never met in person. So again, don't know what I was thinking. But I went out there, and it was really the back of beyond. I remember I was heavily pregnant with our last child. I remember ringing my husband saying, I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose mobile phone coverage. So if anything ever happens, I'm just letting you know where I am. I don't know what he was thinking. And he's going, my wife's gone crazy. But when I got there, they had a beautiful home, really simple home. And then I walked into one part of the house, and it looked like a school. She literally had a blackboard at one end and a whiteboard at the other. She had two desks, because she had two children. She had two desks. She had a teacher desk with her. It was set up like a schoolroom. And I went, oh, and she was very proud. She had maps on the wall, times table sheets, all the rest of it. She was really proud. And I went in with my two young men, they're taller than me now, but young boys. And I probably went, because I don't have a poker face, I probably went something like, oh. And that was just so important to her, that she had a separate schoolroom and everything was immaculate. But for me, I just really couldn't think of anything that was more bizarre, really. Like, for me, just the whole idea of home and being at home and learning together at home, it was like the opposite end of the spectrum. And it was so opposite, and I didn't know very well, that we just didn't even talk about it. Like I remember trying, I was genuinely happy for her, but in my own mind, it was such a glimmer for me of what homeschool could be like. And me being me, I have invited lots of strangers into my house because they're interested. The number of people who have sat in this corner here and just said, I'm just going to sit quietly in the corner and look at how you do it. I've lost count. And of course, they can never sit quietly in the corner while we do it. But they have come in, and I'm not boasting about my home, because I'm looking over here. There's washing. There's a cardboard construction that one of my kids is partway through. Like, if I switch the camera around, it would really keep it real. So I'm not saying it in terms of a home beautiful idea, but it's the feel of home. And me being me, you're getting the hang of it by now, I had offered to look after the younger toddler of a friend of mine while her older child was going for their school interview, because she intended that the older child would go to school. And so I said, oh, well, just he can come and stay here while you go. And that was fine. And they went and had their school interview and was really happy with school, all good. And then they came into our place and went, oh, I was like, what? Like feeling really subconscious. She's like, oh, it's got a really nice feel to it. And I looked, because there'd been, 4 kids playing, and there was stuff everywhere. There was blocks, there was Lego. It was not a picture of Country Style magazine. It just wasn't. But I realized then it did have the feel, because it had us. It had that lived in look. Is that a nice way of putting it? It had authenticity, because it is our home, and that's where we did all of our stuff. You will find science experiments in the fridge and on the kitchen bench. And she had looked at what homeschooling could look like on the blogs or on Instagram and seen the perfectly curated pictures, because of course, they get it on just the right angle, but hadn't stepped into one before. And having been to school and then came to our place, could see the contrast. So for me, like I don't do the classroom setup. For me, it's very much just bringing it all in and bringing it into home. And that's next week. Michelle's going to talk with Kathy, and they're going to talk about your parent culture and family culture. And I guess in a way, this one is very much a lead into that, because when you think about how you set things up in your home and building in your rest and having that idea of Rivendell in your home, or that the way that Mole gets drawn back to his home after he's gone and had a lovely time messing about on boats, you really do see how you're defining your own family culture in your home. Which books you pick, how you do nature study, which bits you have. Like, I've got some beautiful shelves that we collected, like which books get on your shelves. For me, when we were restoring our home, it was very much of, well, what do I want to bring back in, and what do I not need here anymore? So it's identifying what's good for your home, what are non-negotiables, what do you absolutely have to have for this stage of life? What do you need to do to live well and teach well and support yourself and achieve and do and enjoy all of the things that you want to do? And I know we've got a few mums that have got younger ones, and so ahead of talking with Kathy and just sort of trying to bridge the gap between the two, I've got lots of book recommendations. We always do, but I've narrowed it down to just one for once, and it's this one, and it's called Habits of the Household. And it's a really good one to just think about more generally. It's not about homeschooling, okay, but it's about how you think about family. How do you think about your home and your household in this stage, whichever stage you're in? It goes across the gamut, and it's a really good read if you're particularly interested and needing and wanting to go a little bit deeper in that.
Excuse me, Jo, sorry.
Yeah.
Who was? I'll pop it in the chat, that one.
Yeah, okay. So I'll hold up there. That's all right. So I move my fingers. Is that easy?
Sorry,
yeah, he's got a 3.
Whitmell
Early. We did this one in our parents' education group last year, and in our parents' education group, we got a range of ages, and it was just something. It was one of the books that would hit across the range of ages, no matter how old or young your children are. There was something that we all found good in that. And I guess for me, he has a really beautiful part in it. He's talking about home is the place where you can teach with your heart and with your hands and with your actions and your mind, the things that your words just can't express. And as someone who used to work as a speechwriter for a while, like that really spoke to me, because sometimes you just don't have the words. You do just need, particularly in a homeschool setting, you need to just show it with how you live and the choices that you make and the way that you are with your children. So I haven't got much more to say, but I have got a really beautiful quote if I can do that. And then I can see there's a few questions, but I'm sure there's other things we can chat about as well. And it's a beautiful, beautiful one from Fred Rogers when he gave a graduation speech one year. And he said, from the time you were very little, you've had people who smiled you into smiling, people who have talked you into talking, sung you into singing, loved you into loving. And I just thought that really summed up, that's what we do when we're in our homes. We just do those things with our actions and with our hearts. And in all the things that we do or don't do in our homes and with our children and their friends and our friends. And I just thought it was important to bring the home back into homeschool. We can talk about curriculum and books and resources and how to do narration and which best maths curriculum to choose. But if we haven't got that foundation of home, it just doesn't feel that you've got the heart of where you need to have it. That's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Jo. That's so good. One thing I thought I'd share, and I've sort of come up in the questions as well, is that one of my friends, she stopped homeschooling because she said that her kids fought all the time, and that the whole day was about them fighting. And you think you put it on silent, and then it's not. The whole day was about the kids fighting and kicking each other and carrying on all the time. And she said, oh, you just don't know what it's like in my house. They've got to go to school because they've got to be separated. And she, put them in school. But I remember hearing another speaker talking about how whenever they did maths, they would, the boys would kick each other under the table. It reminded me of the story. And he said, so I stopped the lessons and we talk about the behaviour and we deal with the behaviour. And I think sometimes it is hard to stop lessons to deal with behaviour because you kind of just want to get it done or whatever. And when you're homeschooling, there are so many moments where you can have life lessons. And as you're going through your day, you have the ability to really take your day and turn it into not just lessons, but life as a homeschool parent. So I had one child who would routinely have a meltdown, I would say, during a lesson. He wasn't doing his math. He was usually English, actually, trying to write, and he'd suddenly be like, "This is so hard," and he needed a break. And so I would just say, look, just go down, and probably not in this calm voice that I'm saying it to you now. Go to your room and just have a lie down and just have a break, and in half an hour you can come out and we'll finish it off. And you've got that ability to do that when you're homeschooling. You don't have to think, well, we've just got to get it done. Like, just do it. Like, give yourself chances to just have a break if you need to, and don't feel like just because school goes for 8 weeks or 10 weeks that you have to do school for 10 weeks. If you need a day off, if you need a mental health day for you or the family, take your mental health day. Nobody's going to come around to your house and say, except your mother-in-law maybe, come around and say, what are you doing? Why aren't you homeschooling or whatever? Give yourself the freedom to be the parent and be the educator. You can be both at the same time. I know that there's one homeschooling group, there's one homeschooling curriculum in Australia, won't name them, but anyway, they're more like a distance education school, and one of my friends was using them, and she came to my house one time. She said, the reason I don't use the Charlotte Mason method is because I prefer to be a mother, and I don't want to have to be the educator as well. I want to focus on mothering. And ridiculous. Like when you are homeschooling, it's all about parenting as well. The books that you choose when you're sitting there and you're having a chat of, you know, you're reading Wind in the Willows or one of those, or The Hobbit, you know, you stop and you say, isn't that cool? You know, and you have a little life lesson. When you're driving in the car, you have life lessons all the time. So don't, I don't know if you've been somewhere and someone says to you, you know, you're putting the stuff through the checkout or whatever, and then you're saying, and the reason we're buying this food is because this is really healthy or whatever, and you're giving a little lesson on the fly, and then the checkout lady says, oh, are you a teacher? And you just, no, you know, and because it's all about melding the two. And so and you know, you get a lot of social media. Another lady the other day that I know put this thing, wouldn't it be good if schools taught children how to sew, change a tire, and how to cook? And I just thought, why can't parents teach it? You know, we are just, because it's got us and we're the main deal, we have to be thinking all the time, I'm the educator, but I'm the parent as well. And so we are doing both at the same time, all the time, and the two should be crossing over all the time. And that's how it is. And it's very hard to, when you write out your homeschool plan, to really show that, because you can't predict all those things.